Late on Sunday afternoon, a helicopter carrying Iran's president Ebrahim Raisi was forced into what Iranian state media euphemistically described as a hard landing, owing to rough weather. Hours went by, but the search and rescue teams were unable to find the crash site by sunset, and by Sunday evening, Western sources were reporting that Raisi had died. Then, in the early hours of Monday morning, Iranian state media announced that rescue services had found the wreckage, but provided no details about Raisi's condition, essentially confirming that he'd died. So, in this video, we're going to have a look at what we know so far about what happened, who might succeed Raisi, and why this could be immensely destabilising for Iran's domestic politics. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's just start by looking at what's happened over the past couple of days. On Sunday morning, Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi, accompanied by Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and the governor of Eastern Azerbaijan province Malik Rahmati, travelled to the Iran-Azerbaijan border to inaugurate the new Khoda Afrem Dam with the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. On the way back, Raisi's helicopter, one of three in convoy, crashed in the Dizmar forest near the village of Uzi. As you can see from the videos released by the search and rescue teams, the terrain around the crash site is basically dense mountainous forest, and the harsh weather on Sunday made rescue impossible. Interestingly, when it became clear that Raisi's rescue wasn't going to be straightforward, the Iranian authorities received significant help from countries it's not normally too friendly with. Turkey, for instance, deployed 32 search and rescue personnel and a night vision helicopter to the area on Sunday, and the EU allowed Iran to use its satellite system Copernicus to map the area around the crash site. Even Saudi Arabia, which has long been Iran's regional rival, offered assistance, publishing a statement saying that, "We affirm that the kingdom stands by the sisterly Islamic Republic of Iran in these difficult circumstances, and its readiness to provide any assistance to the Iranian agencies need." Despite all this, search and rescue teams were unable to reach the crash site until Monday morning, with videos from Iranian state media showing wreckage amongst the mountains and bodies being transported away from the crash site. It now looks overwhelmingly likely that everyone on board, including Raisi and Amira Abdollahian, died in the event. Raisi's prospects weren't helped by the fact that Iran's helicopter fleet was purchased from the US before the 1979 revolution, and sanctions have apparently made it harder to procure spare parts. So what happens next? Well, there are sort of two ways of interpreting this question. What happens next under Iran's constitution, and how this affects Iranian politics more generally. Let's start with the first one. What happens next under Iran's constitution? The answer to this is pretty simple. Under Article 131, if the president dies or is unable to perform his duties for longer than 2 months, then the vice president, in this case a low-profile politician called Mohammad Mokhber, takes over. The Vice President, the Speaker of the Parliament and the Chief Justice then form a council to arrange new elections within 50 days, with the consent of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. When they happen, these elections will likely be tightly controlled. In presidential elections in Iran, candidates have to be vetted by what's known as the Guardian Council, a group of 12 clerics and judges who are today mostly pro-Khamenei loyalists. The Guardian Council has become increasingly restrictive over the years, banning moderates from running to guarantee that the Ayatollah's preferred candidate ends up winning, and we should expect the same thing to happen this time around. Arguably the only interesting candidate is Mohammad Baha Ghalibaf, who's currently the Speaker of Parliament. Ghalibaf is relatively popular with hardliners because he used to be a senior commander in the IRGC, and he survived all of Khamenei's purges so far. But he's also relatively popular in Iran more generally, in large part because he did a good job as mayor of Tehran between 2005 and 2013. During this time, he actually established a reputation as a bit of a reformer, introducing massive public sector reforms, blanketing the city with over 1,000 parks and establishing new cultural centres, despite opposition from Islamic conservatives. Khamenei might be reluctant to choose Ghalibaf because Khamenei generally doesn't like presidents with their own public profiles who might undermine him. But Ghalibaf would be both way more popular and competent than Raisi, who was renowned for his clueless handling of the economy and his role in the mass executions of political prisoners in the late 80s. Anyway, this takes us on to the second question. How will this affect Iran's politics more generally? Well, the regime will be hoping that, if they replace Raisi fast enough, they'll be able to avoid any political instability, given that Raisi was just an unpopular apparatchik who did whatever Khomeini asked. However, this is a best-case scenario from the regime's perspective, and Raisi's death risks destabilising Iranian politics in at least 3 ways. First, it will fuel conspiracy theories and exacerbate the paranoia that defines Iranian politics. In large part because Iranian politics has genuinely been subject to recurring interference by the CIA and other Western agencies, Iranian politics is generally pretty paranoid, and rumours have already emerged accusing Mossad, the CIA, or even domestic opponents of assassinating Raisi. Second, Raisi's death risks restarting the protests we saw a couple of years ago. This isn't because Raisi is popular with the people or because they're mourning his passing, but rather because they might sense that the regime is in a uniquely precarious position at this point in time. This is clearly something the regime are worried about, which is why the Revolutionary Guard have apparently been deployed in places at risk of unrest, especially Tehran. But the third and most significant way Raisi's death could destabilise Iranian politics is by exacerbating the coming secession crisis. For context, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who replaced Ayatollah Khomeini after his death in 1989, is now 85 years old, but has so far refused to nominate a deputy, and therefore has no obvious successor. The 2 rumoured contenders were Raisi, now dead, and Khomeini's second son Mojtaba. But Mojtaba, whose path now looks clearer, is a very risky choice, both because he's unknown and unpopular, and because it would look ridiculously nepotistic and suggest that Iran has reverted back to a dynastic regime, much like the one the Ayatollahs ousted in 1979. That's all for this video, but there's a whole world of TLDR content out there. You might not know, but we actually have 5 different TLDR channels explaining news from the UK, Europe and the rest of the world, breaking down the latest developments in the business world and also running through the day's most important news that you might have missed. TLDR has been doing this for more than 7 years now, so to celebrate our anniversary, we'd love it if you subscribed. Not only to this channel, but also to any of the others that interest you. They're all linked in the description. Our whole purpose is to make the world around you more understandable, to unpack the confusing parts of the news in a way that's interesting, factual, and entirely non-partisan. So if that's something you're into, then you have 5 channels to enjoy. Thanks for your support over the last 7 years, it really means a lot.